Hello, everyone. Demetrius Gelatis here with Josh Burble. How's it going, Josh?
It's going good, Dan.
Excellent. We're here with the Cue It Up Network. This is Demetrius. I'm with MN Pool Bootcamp, pool training here since 2020. I established, maybe I should lose that. It doesn't really build a lot. Maybe I'm supposed to wait until I hit like 3 or 4 years before I start talking about what the old fashioned swinging sign of when I was established.
Yeah.
Too soon. Okay. Well, let's see. We're excited, man. I'm excited to do a pod. It seems like it's hard to go a month without having just a laundry list of stuff that I think would be fun. And I have a lot of conversations with you and with my students. They're like, man, I wish we could record this. So I've been looking forward to this one. What we have on the docket today, the tale of kind of like different ways, tale of two different enjoyments of the game, short term and long term. The short term kind of intrinsic pleasure of hitting balls in, and then there's enjoyment that people get from being kind of on a journey and striving towards goals in a bigger picture over a longer period of time. So we've got some things we're going to sort out about that. That's things that we've seen from the people we know, the people that we look to, what we're trying to do,
things we've lived through. Yeah.
And then how people get out of balance one way or another. It's kind of interesting. But as a warm-up topic, I just wanted to mention something that's happened. Well, why don't we talk about what's been new with you, Josh? Anything new with pool or life that you want to share with the pod over the last few weeks? Have you been hitting any balls?
Not really. No, I've been busy with work. Like we're in a busy season with my business right now. So I've been kind of buried and recommitted and things like that. But I do get out at least once a week and I play with my friend Anthony. And so we hit balls and things. So it's good. Yeah. And then we got a plan today to match up with a guy, which is going to be fun.
Yeah, we're going to be playing a little Scotch doubles on our side against his singles.
Yes.
And we're going to have a lot. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Exactly.
What is that? Vince
says that.
When he opens up his
Zoom.
Let's play.
Yeah,
let's play.
We're going to have a lot of fun. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Well, yeah, I'm trying to think. I haven't really been doing anything special with pool. I've just been, sometimes I get to play a few sets with my students when before we get going. And so I've had some fun little practice sessions, but nothing too special. I have been busy too, busy. And I want to thank everybody for coming out. So I've had my 2022 is almost booked. I've got like 1 or 2 slots left in December, but just tremendous response. And I couldn't do what I do without people that were hungry about pool. And I got a number of emails since our last podcast where we were making our plans public about our pool club that we're working on, and really warm responses from some people that would like to be part of the club, some people that would like to be part of the training. And so really looking forward to that. So thanks everybody for reaching out, and it's pretty cool. Okay, so something that's came up with my last student. Again, I do pool training. I am a little booked for a while, but I'm going to be, once soon I'll have more spots open here. I still got a couple in December. I'll have some spots open for 2023 pretty soon. But if you have any questions about what I do, you can find me on my website, mnpoolbootcamp.com. MN stands for Minnesota, so mnpoolbootcamp.com. Go ahead.
I was thinking about it too, Demi. Like I sent you a text on this. You're crushing content, man. Like I'm following the stuff that you're. So Dem has a page, Facebook group for all former students and things, and people put up runouts or questions or just a lot of different things. And I've seen you pop in and have comments. And Dem is like, this is like a brilliant pool mind and has a really, really, really good written skills and really can explain things well. And I don't know, man, you're awesome. You've just been killing it and crushing it. And then you did that video about the luck versus
skill
equity. I mean, you're killing it. So I it's obviously I told you that, but I just want to tell your listeners that too. If you can find information about Dem either through his website or through YouTube, or you have older coaches corners people could dig into. I mean, there's just so much gold out there from you, and I just would encourage everyone to look and listen to all of it.
Oh, thanks, Josh. I most of the content, quote unquote, that I do, it's not really content. It is. I'm sorry, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not trying to correct you, but I don't want to set people's expectations the wrong way. There's a lot of great content creators like, Little Chris or Neil Stan that do, lots of different cool content. Whereas what I'm mostly doing is I've got that for the people that have trained with me, I've got that private group where we're doing like ongoing training. And so I do on an ongoing basis, I'll review different videos that they send in of themselves playing so that we can continue to make strive to make strides. I was kind of in between those. Yeah. Anyway, and so what a lot of times will happen is it's amazing how you see patterns come up with like where a certain player is struggling. You can watch one race to 7 against a ghost, and you might see something that really you see that half their errors come from the same leak in their game, and then you can give them specific feedback and stuff to work on that's going to hit that. So that's what we do. Is pretty cool. It's not content in the sense that I don't want people to passively consume it where they're just sitting back and, just teach me something and eating Cheetos. It's sluggish. It's like, I want them to be actively like setting up the runs that they messed up and trying them again the way I describe, or working on the drills that I give them for feedback. So it's more interactive. But along the way, I'm going to make a few of these things that we do public. So I've got a YouTube channel. If you search MN Pool Bootcamp on YouTube, and I just did that skill versus luck equity. That was kind of a fun one. I didn't really intend for that to be public, but then I just flipped a switch. So I might start doing like maybe a 10th of my it's a 10th of the stuff that I record for my group. Maybe I'll just make a little bit of it public. So feel free to subscribe or tune along. I'm at like 400 subscribers because I'm actually I wasn't really interested in like being an influencer or growing a YouTube channel or trying to make content. That's not really my thing. But I'll tell you, it would be kind of cool to get 4 figures and I don't know. It's kind of fun.
I think all I was saying, Dem, is that like
for their sake,
man. Like honestly, like if you go onto AZ Billiards and you simply search Tin Man and go through all your old posts, I mean, you're going to learn so much about pool and approach to pool and mental game and everything. It's just like you just have like a bunch of gold out there. Or if they catch some of your released content on YouTube or some of your old coaches corners or things or old podcasts. I mean, there's just so much gold and all that stuff. So that's all I'm just trying to encourage people to.
No, yeah. And it was weird because I had an interesting experience, which is that last video got like 2,700 views in like 24 hours, which I don't really make YouTube content. So when that happened, I'll tell you, Josh, I was a little embarrassed because it was kind of exhilarating. It was like normally it's like I get like 100 views or something because just, a few people, but all of a sudden it had like thousands of views right away. And I was like, I am important. And it was a little bit of a rush. I'm not going to lie. And immediately I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I can do this. Cause like confession time, like I'm a very, compulsive, addictive, like, it doesn't, obviously I'm a little bit out of balance with who I am. And anyway, I'm like, man, this is a slippery slope for me. Like in 6 months, I could be like, go like Hollywood director where I lose all my friends and start like some kind of like, alcohol addiction. Cause I'm just trying to be famous all of a sudden.
That explains the scarf that Demi's wearing right now. And the beret. He's got a beret and a scarf on right now. So now it all makes sense.
It's all coming clear. Okay. So maybe I'll clip this next part and put it on a coach's corner. So I have seen something come up where people make the wrong diagnosis for a particular symptom. And that symptom is unwanted spin on the cue ball. So I've seen it where sometimes people get down and shoot a shot and they have spin on it that they didn't mean, kind of like when we were just playing Scotch doubles and I left you that really thin cut because I didn't mean to put that inside on there. Anyway, so what, this doesn't really happen to you much, Josh, but at the level where a lot of players are like 500 to 600 Fargo and lower, they get a lot of unwanted spin. And what do you think? What diagnosis do you think they'd make when they get unwanted spin on their cue ball? What do you think they think that means?
Okay, I'm guessing.
Yep.
I'm thinking that they think they need to go closer to center. That's one thought that I had. Not saying that that's correct or that's what they're doing, but I could see a person saying, well, I'm going too far out on the edge or something like that.
Okay.
Whereas I think it's an accuracy issue, like it's just a striking issue.
Fair enough.
But what do you
So most people think that it's a fundamental issue with the way they see center and the way they get on the ball and the way, so like they think that I'm getting on the ball wrong and I don't see the center of the ball correctly. And so then what they think is it's all about sighting, stance, sighting, stroke, it's all about sighting.
That never crossed my mind because I don't.
Tell them what your thoughts are about sighting and stance and stroke.
Yeah, hit in the hole. Like basically, like I've never been a fundamentals or like a sighting or aim systems or anything like that. I've just always, like when I was a kid, I asked a guy, how do I pocket the balls better? And he froze a cue ball on top of another ball and said, shoot that 1,000 times.
Wow.
And it's like, so that's what I did. Like, he was a better player than me, so I did that. And it just helped me to hit the ball straighter and just kind of really have to stay still, right? If you're frozen on top of a ball and you're shooting a long shot. So I don't know. I mean, I just look at it. We've had these conversations about fundamentals and everything like that. It just blows my mind when you say that, Demi, because for me personally, I didn't grow up that way. I don't think that way. I think more like when you say hitting too much English, I think they're not hitting in the right spot, or they're like, I don't think of a fundamental arm drop or some sort of sight thing or aim thing. I think about like work and learn how to hit the ball accurately. So, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, this is cool. So there's kind of two different questions. One is, how do you diagnose what the problem is? And then the second question is, how do you fix it? So the first one is what I wanted to talk about, but we can talk about the second one, which is suppose somebody is getting on the ball wrong, so that every time they try to hit center ball, like for example, every time they shoot a stop shot, they end up with the cue ball spinning 3 to 5 times in place with the same left spin on every shot. And every time they try to shoot center, it ends up with some left spin. Then there is a problem, right? That's not what they're trying to do. So then in that case, then it might, so here's what I'd say is, if it's every single shot they shoot, they're putting left spin on it, then maybe there are some issues with how they're getting on the ball or seeing the ball or something. I mean, something's causing that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So then there's 2 ways to fix it. There's working on the fundamentals to try to get the center ball hit you're looking for, or there's what you're saying, which is set up shots where if you don't hit center, you miss, and then shoot them until you make them. And I like what you're saying, and maybe there's room for both. I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but I think what most people do is what you're saying. What you're saying is what most people do is the wrong way, where they're going to leg the cue ball to the head rail and back and try to hit the tip of their cue, or they're going to try to shoot stop shots and beat themselves up every time they're off center, and they're going to start worrying about their head and their stance and their stroke. Whereas what you're saying is, what if you just set up a straight shot where you're over a ball and just shoot it until you start making it, and instead of trying to manually control the way your body is, instead of trying to build your body so that the ball magically goes in, just try to keep making the ball until your body figures it out without you.
That is exactly how I approach it, Demi. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to approach it that way. I'm just saying that that's my school of thought. And the reason why I don't know if I'm an anti-fundamentalist. I just made that word up, but like, I don't know if I'm an anti-aim system. I probably am, honestly, a little bit. And maybe because I feel like I'm so protective against putting people down rabbit holes that are going to get them more frustrated and more confused and not feel like playing. And and then there's also the shortcutty element of it too. So it's like, I just
tell them what that means, because I think I know what you mean. Shortcutty element.
Well, like
people are trying to find it.
People are trying to find a magic bullet so they can start playing and winning. And
people work 10 times harder than they need to, trying to find an easy road. Yeah. And if they just were stupid and said, I'm just going to keep shooting it until I'm out. And I guess what I think is that.
Did you just call me stupid? No, I'm just kidding.
I think so. I was hoping, I didn't think you'd pick up on it.
I'm not smart enough to pick up on it.
Okay, there's levels to this. Anyway,
yeah, exactly.
So what I would say is that this game is so complicated that, and I was going to save this for a different debate about the value of systems versus, feel. Systems versus feel. That's another conversation. Mm-hmm. But what I would say is that there are people who believe that systems are always advantageous, and that the more you know, the better you're going to perform, and the better picture you're going to have in your mind of how things are going to work. That there's a narrative that says the more systems I know, the more quickly I'm going to learn, and the better I'm going to perform. And having a better picture of what actually happens is going to lead to an advantage, blah, blah, blah. And I don't agree with that underlying thesis. And so the more information you know is not always better. For example, like NBA stars, they're not out there like measuring, barometric pressure, and they're not out there measuring humidity, and they're not out there calculating like what phase the moon is and how that's going to affect the gravitational pull and influence the arc of their basketball. Like, that's not what they're doing. Because so if you were to say, well, that's more information is useful, right? It's like, no, that's not useful. Because there's also a cost to that, which is it's a distraction from what really matters. So anyway, that's a whole different conversation than the one I wanted to have, which is what are the pros and cons of using systems and what are the pros and cons of quote unquote getting a lot of information. And as an instructor, I'm supposed to be all pro information. And I deal with a lot of people that are like really trying to educate themselves and learn, because they think that knowledge is going to equate to performance. And I should be the one toting that. Most instructors are all about knowledge. I'm like, no, I'm about performance. And so, okay. So getting back to like the sighting and over a ball stuff, if you think that you have to consciously figure out what your body, why are you hitting off center? If you're like,
this is a biomechanical issue and I can solve it.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, 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 very smug and overconfident, which is like, I'm in control of my body and I understand that there's a problem and I'm going to figure out why my body's making this problem and then I'm going to fix it and then I'm going to be perfect at the end of it. It's like, no, you're not good enough to diagnose it. You're not good enough to fix it. You're probably not as in control as you think. And this is way more complicated than you think because everything affects everything. And the problem is there's a cost. There's a cost to getting controlling. There's a cost to getting in, to start to consciously control things that should be kind of more automatic and subconscious. There's a cost to starting to try to understand the process of aiming and the process of setting up on balls and the process of how you line up your cue and how you hold your cue and where your elbow is and all this. When the more you start thinking about it, the more you start tinkering with it, the more you start trying to control it. Like this can either be an automated process that works magically, and then if it has a problem, you just focus on visualizing the result you want and let it fix itself magically, or you could try to manually control it and crush the soul out of the game and be controlling and ineffective. Like that's kind of, right?
Yeah, I think. And then the only other thing I'd add, Demi, is that the people. If you're trying to be like Mr. Biomechanics and fix everything through that way. My opinion is, okay, I come from a golfing background too. My opinion is there's not enough information in pool. There's not a PGA training facility with computers and everything like that, and video and done through like, there's not like a heavy duty research element to pool. There are guys that are out there selling things and trying to get people to buy their systems or their packages of training, let's say. And I'm very cautious because there's not enough research and science and information behind it. Whereas if you were saying, I'm going to go play golf and I'm going to work with a PGA instructor and they're going to bring out a camera and they're going to work on my swing, well, there's hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of research behind that. And so I can get more on board with that. With pool, I haven't seen that. And so I'm very cautious about people and looking for those answers and people that are preying on people looking by selling those answers, because I don't think those answers are as cut and dry and as established as potentially they are with the golf swing. I don't think the pool swing is as developed.
Yeah, it would be like if you had a car, like an exotic race car from, a German race car, sports car. If there was some guy that was like 65 years old and he has built and restored race cars his whole life, and he's built these things from the ground up, and he knows everything that there is to know about that type of sports car, maybe you can let the guy work on it. But if what you've got is a few mechanics that are, smoking pot, waiting for 3:00 in the afternoon and just kind of like disengaged, listening to music, wrenching on stuff randomly and making like real surface level superficial diagnosis and just like, oh, it's not running right, we'll just crank this, and they start banging on stuff, like you wouldn't want to take your car to them. And I feel like with golf, it's like very, 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 very refined, where they have the whole picture. I mean, on some of these leading, maybe there's enough information out there to where they can make a complete diagnosis. Yeah. Whereas in pool, you've got a bunch of guys kind of running around like, with like one little tidbit, like you should stand this way, or you should make sure you have clearance here, or you should make sure that your eye's like this, or have you tried, stepping into the shot like this? And if you're just out there, trying to figure it out, it's just going to probably make things worse. So go on. Sorry.
No, that's it, man. And that's all I would caution people about, is that it's not all or nothing, right? There are biomechanical answers to physical things that are happening with the pool swing, but I just don't know who knows those answers. And I don't know that, like, I personally haven't met anyone that's had all those answers or knows those answers or seen anyone like creating content with those answers. And so how can it be that there's this like zombie army of people that think that they're gonna find those answers and then they're gonna play perfect, or increase their game so much?
Yeah. And I think that it's not all or nothing, but what I would say is that okay, let's look at two extreme examples of somebody trying to fix a flaw in their game that they know is a flaw. So let's just say every time they shoot a stop shot, they've got it spinning with left spin. And that's just, they don't know why. Well, if they have hit that shot for 5 years, an hour a day, and they're still spinning with left spin, trying to like ask their body to figure out how to hit center, at some point, if they've put in 5,000 hours of hitting stop shots and they're still spinning it with left spin, I think somewhere along the way they can say, hey, maybe I'll post on AZ Billiards, like, has anybody ever had this problem? What was there anything that helped you figure it out? Was there any drill you did that helped that? Was there any, was there anything to, at some point, if it's been 5 years, but here's the problem. And I know what the problem is that if somebody's hit 5 shots in a row with left spin and they, they're trying to stop the ball, and they've hit 5 shots in a row with left, if they immediately jump on AZ Billiards and say, well, I got to fix this. It's like, well, wait a second. Somewhere between 5 shots and 5,000 hours, there's a spot at which maybe you can start tinkering with something or opening your mind to some new information, or asking somebody, what they think if they've ever had that problem. I just feel like most people immediately, I'm going to control this, figure it out and fix it. Whereas I think to your point, you're like, well, I shot 1,000 balls over a ball and never had that problem. And so I feel like most people go right to, I'm going to gather information and manually fix this. Whereas that, for like me and you, that's like the last resort. Would you agree?
Yeah. And I know a guy that hit a shot for probably 15 years with left spin, me, with the break. And so I could not hit a flat break for years and years and years and years. And so I sat there with a break rack and I hit thousands and thousands and thousands of break racks. And there's something that my body does that I deliver the cue through, and I think I'm going straight, and the cue goes and hits low left. And so finally I made an adjustment. I aim low right and I hit center ball, and now I'm crushing the break, and I'm flat on the break, and I'm not spinning the cue ball. And it's like, it's just, there was no answer out there. There's no instructor that I could go to that could videotape my swing, quote unquote, and say, this is what you're doing wrong and this is how you fix it. And so like, that was my experience, Demi, is I just,
and that's a great, and so I think that right now there's like, 20% of the listeners are purists who are shuddering because they're like, wait a second. So you're somehow you're hitting off center, and your fix is to aim at the wrong spot on the cue ball and just budget for the correction. Like, you're supposed to figure this all out and then find a way so that you can aim and hit exactly where you're looking, and your body does exactly what you want it to. And this is like, they're shuddering right now. But here's the thing. Josh is breaking better than I've never seen him break this good in my life. And it's been like a month or two straight now. Several months of him crushing the rack at 22 miles an hour and exploding the rack and making 2 balls and getting shape. So it's like, at some point you've got to ask yourself, and this kind of goes into our preview of our, not our narrative, but like what we're going to be talking about. Which do you want to be? Do you want to be better? Or do you want to get better? Or do you want to be right? Do you want to get better? Or do you want to do it your way? Mm-hmm. And I think that this is a life thing too. I've heard that in marriage a lot, where they're like, well, do you want to be married, or do you want to be happy, right, or do you want to be right? Do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? And it's like, people that want to be right. And it's like, I'd like to get better, but I want to get better my way. And here's the way I think it ought to work. And I want to figure out why my body does what it does, make it do it the way I want it to, and then see improvement that way. And there's a reason for that, is because there's a certain payoff people get from, they get off on being in control of it all, and they like to be in control of it all. And it takes a certain amount of surrender and humility to say, I don't know why this is happening, and I don't know that I can fix it, and I don't know that I'm smart enough and capable and competent enough to like gather information and troubleshoot and come out the other side perfect because I'm so smart. Like, I don't know that that's the case. So let's just be humble and say, I'm not that smart, I'm not that good. So let me just try to do it the stupid way and just hit balls until my body figures it out, because I'm not smart enough to.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way I approach it. And then
it works.
And then it works. It works for me. It has worked for me. And when I was a golfer, I took professional lessons, and I had some bad lessons, and I would go to the lesson and I'd be like, nah, doesn't make sense, doesn't fit with me. And then I found 1 or 2 really good instructors, and I just shoved my chips in with them, and they gave me drills to do every week, and my handicap would just race down, because once I had like the correct things to work on, the correct drills, because because golf is really a mechanical, the swing is a very mechanical thing. I mean, Jim Furyk is probably the one-off guy that has a real loopy, weird swing. And there are some guys that don't have as perfect as swings, but in general, the golf swing is pretty established. So anyways, yeah, I'm just trying to say, like, I'm not against instruction. I'm not against mechanics. I'm not against fundamentals, quote unquote. I'm real cautious with it. And then ultimately, I talk about golf and Ben Hogan, dig it out of the dirt. Like, that's kind of my mindset. And that's more where I lean, because I see people that are looking for these quick answers, and I see people trying to sell them quick answers. And that just frustrates me. And that just makes me, it makes me not upset, but like,
yeah. So to kind of conclude, what we're saying is, instead of trying to manually figure it out and fix it all, be aware of it. And then instead of trying to be in control and fix it, figure out there's certain things you can work on in terms of drills or certain shots that force you to, I say this a lot, necessity is the mother of invention. So Josh mentioned shooting over balls. So, shooting over ball shots just putting an hour shooting over ball shots until you figure out how to make the ball go in, and then letting your body figure it out instead of trying to figure it out the way you want to figure it out. And that there's a balance between gathering information and trying to, make manual adjustments versus making intuitive kind of, feely adjustments and letting your body make the adjustments. And most people are way, way, way out of balance on trying to manually control everything. And pool is a game that trying to manually control your body is just not effective. And this goes right back to inner game of tennis: self one, self two. Self one's the controller, self two's the doer, self one's the teller. And there's many, many, many things about the best ways to learn are trying to bypass self one and the conscious brain as much as possible, trying to minimize the conscious brain's role. And so, and as an analogy I've been using more and more, self one, the teller, the thinker, the I, is like the dad, and self two, the performer, is like a little league player playing baseball. And it's like, what relationship does the dad and the little league player have? And how do they work when the little league player is at bat? And so that's a really good analogy for how you should be looking at your pool game. So if you think that you're going to tell yourself, I know what steps I have to take, and then I'm going to manually control myself, and I know that if I step into the shot this way and make sure my eyes in this spot and my arms in that spot, and then I make sure I excel, that would be like saying you're going to have a dad-child team where every time the kid goes to play baseball for the rest of his life, the dad's going to be standing behind him on the plate saying, now remember, swing your bat and make sure you come up on the bat and make sure you keep this and make sure you're doing that. Now don't drop your bat. Make sure you follow through. Like, nobody would ever suggest that this is a great coaching strategy, is that the dad's going to sit there with a longer and longer and longer list of crap and then try to like remind the kid to do all that on every shot while the kid is up at bat. Like, everybody understands that, no, that's not the dad's role. The dad's role can be to set him up with the right coach, give him a couple things to swing, let him hit it a few times, occasionally give some very gentle feedback and some very gentle guidance. But a lot of times just have the kid doing certain techniques or drills that are going to help him develop the areas he needs to, and basically play the minimal. The question, how involved should the dad be? And the answer is like the minimum necessary,
the least amount possible.
The least amount possible, that the dad's going to sabotage far more careers than he's going to help.
So I have a little league player. My mommy started playing baseball.
Yeah.
And you're just like, nobody does that. And I'm like, everybody does that. Like, I sit in the stands and like on the sides and I watch, and I'm like, this one kid's up to bat and his dad is sitting on first base and he's just screaming instructions at the kid when he's batting. And then the kid, one of the coaches behind him, which they're coaching and they're trying to teach, I get it, but it's like, do this. And he's got like 4 different things that he's telling him to do. And because everybody wants the kid to hit the ball. And I just watch my kid play, and I go out, and like, for me, the best thing I can do is that's funny, volume with my kid. Yeah. I bring him out and I bought a catcher's mitt and I have him pitch, and I'm like, just pitch, just keep pitching. And there's little tricks I'll do. I'll set up garbage cans, so like there's a small zone that he needs to hit, or I'll give him a pointer once in a while, like, hey, you need to throw to the glove, that kind of a thing, once in a while. But it's very, very sparing, Demi. It's like hardly at all. It's mostly just get out there and do it. Let's have fun. Let's play, and you'll figure it out. Let your body figure out how to make this thing happen. So
yeah, and the problem is that too many parents are living through their kids' accomplishments and their kids' for the prestige as a parent. So you've got the ego of the parent that's feeding on the society's ratings of their kids. And so then they identify with it, they're controlling about it. And the same thing happens with pool, where people are getting off on, I am so smart and I am on this journey. And this ties in a little bit with narratives that we've talked about in the past, but it's also going to tie in a little bit with what we're talking about today, which is too many people are playing a game where it's like, look at how smart I am. Look at how cunning I am as far as my strategy of improvement. Look at how in control I am. And I've got these plans about how I'm going to develop myself into greatness. And they're just so smug and self-satisfied. And what they're doing is just sabotaging themselves because, and the inner game of tennis, the whole book is about the relationship between the teller and the doer and how that relationship can become dysfunctional. And when the teller starts getting, which is the ego and the controlling part of you that assigns a lot of importance to short-term outcomes and really wants to look good and win and be in control, that part really, 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 really doesn't like to relinquish control because it thinks it's all about him. So then when you say, what it's going to be, people listening right now to play that game, they're going to be like, well, if I don't correct it, it's not going to get fixed magically. And if I keep making the same mistake, I need to, figure that out and then correct it, right? Otherwise, I'm going to keep making that mistake and I'm not going to get better. And you need me. And we've talked about this before. And it's like the bottom line is, no, the same way that a kid learning baseball is going to learn look at it this way. In the inner game of tennis, he says, kids learn to walk before they learn to talk. They did not learn to walk because of verbal instruction. They didn't have some overbearing parent that's like, no, I told you, remember, it's left foot, then right foot. And then you got to make sure you swing your balance. And like, you don't have some obnoxious dad who's drinking beers and, depressed about his busted out life, trying to control his toddler and how to walk. Yeah. Like, that's not how they learn to walk. They figure it out. Yeah. And I guess what, people are capable of. So if you find yourself like, well, I got it. No, you don't. No, you don't. You can figure it out. Let yourself figure it out. Less is more, less is more, less is more. Mm-hmm. I told my last student, I've never said this before, pool is less like sculpting and more like whittling. People think pool is like sculpting, where you're taking additional pieces and assembling them and adding and adding and adding to build some structure. But it always is too much. It's always too much. It's always too much. And the answer is always less than you think, less than you think. So for example, power on the break, less than you think. How hard you have to hit draw shots is less than you think. How hard, it's the more I learn, the more pool is about doing less, simpler. It's not about doing hard stuff and getting better at hard stuff. And it's about keeping simple angles, using simple shots, staying simple, making ball in hand and not shooting ball in hand into the side pocket point because you lost a moment and took it for granted. It's about simpler. And so I feel like good pool is like whittling, where you're actually whittling away and doing less and less and less until you get to the skeleton of what's needed. Your stroke, you're whittling away extra movement. Your break, you're whittling away unnecessary clenching. Your brain, You're whittling away distracting thoughts and commands and all the crap that we're telling ourselves and trying to instruct ourselves. That's stuff that needs to be whittled away, God damn it.
No, you're right on, man. You're right on.
Okay, so then the funny part is that's nothing to do with what I was here to do talking about. It's great. I love everything. I'm not at all. I just think it's cool that comes up. But so back to our original problem, you're hitting unwanted left spin. If the left spin is unwanted on every shot, then maybe you need to let that be. Then you need to fix that. Notice I almost said you need to let that be fixed, because the first thing is if it's on every shot, maybe there's a problem. And then the best way to handle that problem is to just hit a bunch of balls, maybe try elevated shots, like Josh said, shooting over a ball for a while and let your brain figure it out. And then if you've done that for, 1,000 hours and you still have a problem, make a post on easy billiards. But that's like, basically that's when your brain gets to get involved, is after you've already tried to dig it out of the dirt for a month or a year. Okay. That being said, I wanted to talk about the other problem, which is the misdiagnosis.
Can I just mention one thing, Demi?
Yeah.
If you are hitting it too far to the left, you can sit there and say, well, it's the stupidest thing in the world to go hit it on the right. But I've had PGA type instructors make corrections by overcorrecting the opposite. And this is not the answer this is not exactly the answer, but it is one way to mess with it and work with it and let your body figure it out, is to try some overcorrecting things that are opposite and see what happens. That's all. I'm just saying, like, this is like a organic way that you can.
It's a very, and what I like too is it's a very it's a results based thing. It's not a process based thing where I'm going to cure my process. It's what do I need to do to get results, and let's just get the results and see, and then let my body figure out how to get those results.
Well, once you do that and you see the correction, like for me with the break, once I moved the cue over to the right and I started cueing to the right and delivering through to the bottom, well, my body, it became normal and natural, and it kind of just accepted it. And so there wasn't some massive thing that I needed to do with my shoulder and my point of this or my that. It's like I just kind of felt it, tried it, did it, and it felt so good right away. I'm like, oh my God, like this now I'm hitting the freaking thing flat. And so like I would just say that was game changing for me, because the break that I have now compared to the break I had for the last 20 years is night and day. And so like I'm just trying to share, like, this is something that I did that worked, and it's something that I,
and it not only did not involve manual control, it didn't involve fixing anything. It just involved doing what you needed to do to get the results. Accepting, just get the results.
Yeah, exactly. And also it went from talk about overnight things. It literally happened overnight. So it's like, it's just funny. So it's like maybe something you could use that little tip, or as a player, if you're doing something, try doing a more exaggerated opposite of it and see if you can dial in some sort of middle ground, or mess with it, see if it helps you. That's all I want to say.
Cool. So now the question is, why do people make a misdiagnosis? Is because a lot of what I've seen when people are putting unwanted spin on the cue ball is it's not consistently on every shot. And so they're making a certain, they're, for example, I watch them shoot stop shots, and they're hitting perfect stop shots, or they're hitting perfect shots most of the time, but then they're working on one shot and they're putting left spin, or they're putting inside English on it again and again and again. And their first go-to is, I must not be seeing center right. I have problems seeing center. I need to fix my fundamentals. And I'm like, wait a second. How come this is the first I've seen of this? We've been playing for 24 hours. How come I haven't seen this before? Or they'll start putting right spin on the ball accidentally. And after watching this, I've come to realize if it's on every single shot, then that's one thing. But if it's on some shots and it's not consistent, then I don't think it's about sighting and fundamentals and how you come through the ball. And I've come to realize, I think it's about how you're getting on the ball. So I'm going to explain. Picture the cue ball in the middle of the table. The shot you're shooting is on the second diamond on the side rail. So you're cutting a ball down the rail. And this is actually the exact shot where I've seen unwanted spin come up all the time. It's like the ball's not frozen on the second diamond, but it's near the second diamond on the side rail. And you're in the center of the table, cutting it down the rail. And what happens is people will start cutting that ball down the rail, and they'll start having little bits of side spin that affect where they go across table and hit the second rail. And so as I look at that, and they're always like, oh, I'm not sighting it right. I don't see center correctly. I'm like, no, what goes on is this. There are levels of play where people don't really worry too much about the cue ball and their tip accuracy. And there's when they get a shot like that, they're basically just trying to make the shot down the rail and bounce. And whether they bounce across table to the second diamond or across table to the first diamond, I'm just trying to cut the ball down the rail and bounce. And as they work with me, obviously not obviously, one of the things, for those that don't know, one of the things I work on is we're building better patterns, and better patterns require better cue ball. And that requires not only more accurate cue ball, but understanding which angles and shots lead to more accurate cue ball. So as we're starting to do this, I'm putting pressure on their technique and their tip accuracy in a way that they haven't had before. And so what I've learned is there's like on an old radio, we used to have two dials. We'd have the big dial that you could use to zing the radio needle all the way across from 88 to 109. And then you have that little fine-tuned radio needle. So that basically use the big radio needle to kind of get around the station you want. And then you have that smaller knob that barely moves the needle that you use to fine-tune so that your reception's good. Remember that? You remember that? Yeah. The radio. Yeah. So the problem is, once you get down on the shot, you only get to use the fine-tune. And so what I've seen people that when they get down to shoot a ball down the rail, so now they're cutting this ball down the rail to it's a left. They're going to cut it to their left. So if they get down and plop down on the ball and they're aiming at it too thick, they get down where they're aiming it to where it's going to hit the side rail and hang, and they need to cut it thinner. Well, if they get down and they're around center, but they're aiming it too thick, well, now they need to swivel their aim to the right. And as they swivel their aim to try to cut it thinner and thinner, they're hitting the cue ball right of center. And then they make the shot, but then they have right spin on it. And they go a diamond higher across table than they meant to. And they're like, oh, I didn't mean to put that on. And I've seen it the other way, where people are aiming too thin and then they swivel in and they put inside on it. And so basically, when people start, their target is making the ball go in the pocket. And as they get better, their target starts becoming hitting their cue ball to certain spots on the table. Well, as they're developing tip accuracy, what I've seen is they're not careful about how they get on the shot. They're just kind of plopping down on the shot and then making these big adjustments. And when they make big adjustments, they might make the shot, but they're not going to have the tip accuracy that they need. And so what I've told, and this is usually married to people that just like, they just kind of chalk it. And when I say they plop down on the shot, like they don't aim standing up. And I just feel like when I look at a lot of shots, like I kind of make the shot standing up first. Like it's not some long time consuming thing, but it's like I kind of see the shot line. I see the shot. I feel the shot standing up. And then when I get down, I'm close. I'm very close to where I need to be as far as my aim and my tip. And then if I need to make adjustments because I don't feel quite right, I have to they're like micro adjustments. They're fine tune adjustments. It's a small radio knob. I'm not getting down and then swiveling over an inch and a half to try to cut the ball inside. Does that make sense? What I just
Perfectly. Said? Yeah. You're saying you want that shot visualized, set up, aligned, kind of ready to go. And then you step into the shot and you could shoot potentially, but if you have a tiny little micro adjustment. Yeah. Cause we've done video reviews and I've seen players and you say like sometimes they crawl into the shot from the side and sometimes they'll crawl into the shot and they'll kind of wiggle back and forth and see their head movement and things or their arms and like major movements for how much you should be moving when you're down on the shot. So yeah, I've seen it in action and it's really good advice, Demi.
Yeah. So when you get down on the shot, you can fine tune. And if you're fine tuning around and you don't feel good, just get off the shot, get back up, especially, if there's no shame in getting off the shot, resetting and getting back down. And especially, this is going to happen. It's going to be kind of painstaking if you're first learning to use side spin, especially. There's a lot of, feely, fine-tuning stuff that you might have to do. But you got to be able to get off the ball if you find yourself making more than a small adjustment. There's also a fun challenge you can try if this is a chronic problem of yours. It's the no practice strokes. Where and this is really good too for people that are too manually controlling.
Yeah.
I've been down this road before, so I know. But I like there's a practice drill I like where you just run a table, whatever, any ball, any pocket, just or whatever you want to do, just shoot some pool. But what you do is you don't get to use practice strokes and you don't get to adjust. So you see the shot standing up, you drop down on the cue ball and you swing your arm. You drop down on the cue ball and you swing your arm. You just use no adjustments. And if you maybe practice a shot that's giving you problems, just set up that shot and just practice getting down and swinging your arm, because then it's going to force you to do more work standing up and less work down.
Yeah.
And that's something that again, to your point, it's the right direction that you like to go, which is instead of I'm going to do more and more and more stuff while I'm down on the shot. It's like, no, we're going to work harder. We're gonna just focus on performing a drill or performing a practice technique of dropping down and shooting that will force you to figure out how to get on the ball to where you don't need to do all that crap.
Yeah. Because if you know that you have to get down and fire, you're gonna really do all your pre-shot stuff and your visualization and your
it puts pressure on that front end of the shot.
Yeah.
So again, unwanted spin. If it's every shot, it might be something that's needs to be fixed, but the best way to fix that is to let your body figure it out or overcorrect. And then if it's once in a while and it's inconsistent, it probably has more to do with not being careful enough about how you drop on the ball and making too big of an adjustment. So when you find yourself adjusting too much, just get off the ball and try work a little harder standing up. And if you want to try to anchor that technique, you could once in a while try the no practice stroke thing, and that'll help develop the front end of your shot routine. All right. Well, that was our warm-up. That was our warm-up topic. So now what was on my mind, and we've been kind of talking about it from different angles, was, that there's a couple different ways that people derive joy from pool. And I'm going to try to sum them up by saying one is more of a here and now intrinsic, there's a kind of, and it's interesting, but when you get down, you want to try to pocket a ball and get your cue ball somewhere, and you get down and you try hard and it goes in and you get where you want to be, there's a certain pleasure that you come from snapping a ball in the pocket and having it work the way you want it to.
Yep.
And then there's also a pleasure that people can get from kind of a longer term, I want to achieve certain goals. I want to win a certain tournament. I want to beat a certain player. I want to achieve a certain Fargo rate, and you develop your skills and you try to achieve some longer term objective that is rewarding as well.
Yeah.
So you've kind of got like a here and now and, more intrinsic thing. And then you've got kind of a more climb a hierarchy, accomplishment. It's more of a success, pocketing, pocket one ball enjoyment versus achieving a long-term goal enjoyment. And that they're two different things. What anything you can do to add to make those easier to, did I explain that okay?
No, that's right on. Yep. I think that's spot on, Dem.
Okay. And what's interesting is, I feel that there are, we've talked about narratives in the past, and I think that there are some things that people can do. It has to be set up the right way for pool to work at the granular level, which is pocketing balls, getting positioned, staying focused, staying hungry, being, not choking, being prepared to do the work in front of you. There's a certain number of things. There's a lot of pieces in place to play good pool. And most of those pieces require like kind of a fun, like at the, no, I don't want to say fundamental level, because I don't mean physically fundamental, but that there has to be these underlying narratives and purposes and, goals and things. They have to be set up right. And if they're set up wrong, it can either lead to poor results, short-term, poor results, long-term, or a miserable road and a miserable journey. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to talk about like, what are some of the mistakes we see setting that up and things like that.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll start with the first part, which is like, why is it fun to even hit a ball in the pocket? Like I don't want to get too philosophical, maybe it's too late, but like, what is it about, is there, if you take out the ego and the hierarchy and the climbing and how good am I and who can I beat? And if you just get down to where you're by yourself in your basement and nobody will ever know because you're not going to tell anybody and nobody cares, but just you get down and you make a good shot that used to give you trouble that you've worked on, or you just get down and you pocket a couple balls really, really well and you're in the present. Like, what is it about that is joyful or pleasurable?
I think as humans, we want to progress. We just want to progress. Like, we don't want to stay still. We don't want to be stagnant. We want to progress and improve. I think that's part of our human existence is a desire to do that, But
I think that ties more to the growth, the goals and all that. But what about just the getting down and shooting a stop shot?
I was thinking because okay, I'm sorry. No problem. Reason why I'm saying that is because I used to not be able to do that, and now I can do that. And so that just continues to repeat itself. I remember when I couldn't do that.
Couldn't do what? Just
XYZ thing. Yeah, I couldn't make that shot. I couldn't draw the ball like that. I couldn't hit that shot. I couldn't run that many balls. I couldn't stay focused. Whatever the thing is. When I'm playing and practicing solo, some of it, not all of it, is, well, I couldn't do that before, and now I can.
And I would say that pleasure that you get from that, it ties more into that hierarchy climbing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I'm talking about, what about a stop shot that you've been able to hit since you were 13 years old? But isn't it still satisfying in some way to just get down, get on the ball, do what you've known how to do for years, but it's just fun to do. It's just fun to get down and shoot a ball in the pocket.
Yeah.
Or is it not fun at all unless it's,
No. Okay. So
I'm trying to understand, because I'm confused. I think it's interesting. Yeah.
I'll just tell you from what I've been going through, Demi, is that like I gave up competition, I don't remember how, like a year ago or whatever it is now. And I sold my table and I stopped playing pool and I was done. And then I went out a couple weeks after that and hit some balls. I'm like, this is awful. I'm not even interested. And then I went 6 months without hitting balls. And then I came back to pool, and now, like, I just like hitting balls. I like playing pool. Like, I just like there's something about the colors of the cloth and the balls and the thing and all the noises and
small motions.
Yeah, all that stuff. And then also, like, I texted you, I watched The Color of Money the other night, and it was just like, there's something about a pool table and the pockets and all that stuff. at its core, now there's also all the ego stuff and all the competition and all the hierarchy stuff that is part of it, right? But at its core, just playing and hitting balls in is very fun and enjoyable. And yeah, and I don't know how much of it is still stuck in that hierarchy, Demi, but I definitely know that the farther away I've got away from competition, the more I've enjoyed pool and the more I'm enjoying pool. And the less, like, I go play my buddy Anthony, and he hasn't played in 30 years. He's not, he's coming back to pool, and he enjoys hitting balls, and we're hitting balls together, and we play at different levels. But like, I'm never sitting there thinking, am I playing good or bad? I'm just playing, and I'm having fun, and I'm enjoying trying to put the ball in the hole and trying to focus and hit shots, And then part of it is too, like, and maybe that's a hierarchy thing too, but like, when I hit shots and he just busts out laughing because they're really tough shots, it's like, that's a fun thing, like, between, like, or you and I do that too, it's, I don't know, maybe
Yeah,
I'm off the rails, but
no, I think that we live in a culture, and we grew up in a culture, and we still live in a culture that is so focused on goals and hierarchy, and look at me and look at how good I am.
yeah,
That it's almost impossible to remember what exists outside of that.
yeah,
My premise is that we're very out of balance in that direction. And that it's hard because, like you're saying, even when you're trying to think of things that are intrinsically joyful, it's often we peel it back a layer and it's like, oh shoot, I guess I'm enjoying look at how good I am, or look at this. I'm not picking on you. I'm like,
I'm just like, this is a struggle. Yeah.
And so when I think about it is, there are some things about just letting your focus, it's like a form of meditation, right? Where your busy life and your busy brain and all the pressures that are on you and all the stresses that are on you, and you're able to let all that go and just focus on one thing. So it's a release from responsibility and from all the stuff that's overwhelming us and distracting us from our lives. And there are some peak states that are really fun to experience, where you kind of, it's almost like as humans, we live in our heads a lot, but we're animals. And so it's kind of like when you spend a few days walking in nature, it can make you feel very relaxed. The same way, we're not used to, we're used to surfing our phone while watching a show, while talking to somebody, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So shutting your brain down and just hitting a ball in a hole can help us reconnect to the here and now. And without getting like spiritual about it, I mean, there's a lot to be said about being present and enjoying the moment. And we can lose that as thinking cognitive, animals. And so it's good to reconnect to our basic, here and now. So there are some things. And if you look at a beginner, think about a kid who's never played pool before. Think about a 10-year-old that's never played pool before. And they get a cue and they just start racing around the table and shooting at balls, and stuff goes in. And there's like, they're not out there like, look at how good I am, or look at how far I've come, or look at where I'm going to go. They're just enjoying hitting balls around. And there's something joyful about that. So what is it? So if you want to know, like, what is it that we enjoy intrinsically about the game, it's like, well, what does a 10-year-old enjoy? And they found the game fun the first time they ever played it. They were up there shooting at balls, and sometimes they'd miss, and sometimes they'd mean to knock the ball in there, and wow, they bounced it off the wall and it went in, and it's like this big exciting thing. And it's really, it's not an exciting thing like, look at how good I am, although maybe they could do that on their second shot, they could already feed into that. But I think a lot of it is just like, it worked, you know what I mean? That was fun, it was fun to try. And I think so if I were to try to summarize the things that I could say that are pretty much here and now types, it's like, it's like the blissful meditation, the zone state, and just the joy of challenging yourself with something and then wrestling with that challenge and sometimes overcoming it, that those are very enjoyable things at the surface level.
Mm-hmm.
So then it'll be a lot easier to talk about what are all the other ways you can enjoy the game, which is goal setting. And then where goal setting gets weird is goal setting's got to be good, right? There's a value in it. So when is it good? When is it bad? When are these the longer term, hey, I'm here now, I want to be somewhere else, and I'm going to work towards that goal. When is that useful? What are the useful things it does, and how does it provide healthy enjoyment of achievement and confidence and whatever, versus when does it become unhealthy, and when does it start sapping joy, and when does it start sabotaging growth and performance? That's kind of what I've been thinking about.
Yeah.
So what are the good things? So long-term goals, you already mentioned this. You said that people kind of innately want to progress and want to develop. And I agree. I think that there's something profound about wanting to wake up today and be a little bit better than we were yesterday. I think that a big part, I mean, everything grows, the universe expands and life evolves, and humans grow from babies into adults, and we learn to speak, and we learn to develop competencies at different things that we, things that we couldn't do before, that we learn how to do. And we become more effective and hopefully mature and more responsible, more effective, and lead better lives. And so I think that somehow we're hardwired to want to develop ourselves. And so pool is a great game in the sense that we can set up an artificial lab environment of something that maybe is doesn't really matter. It's kind of arbitrary on the surface, it's hitting balls in a pocket, but that we can attach some meaning to it and then practice. We get to practice our skills of developing ourselves. And not only do we get to develop ourselves at this pool game and enjoy that process, but a lot of what we learn about developing in a pool game, we've learned how to develop ourselves to where, then when you get into work or you try to go, it teaches you accountability, it teaches you hard work, it teaches you how to be patient, it teaches you how to, achieve a good mindset, all these things, mm-hmm. right? So it's satisfying to grow in the game, and those things are beneficial throughout your life. So I think that there's a lot of positives about, and I think that it makes sense that we want to grow and have some goals. Anything you want to add to that or thoughts?
No, I think you're right on. I think the only thing is like that side of the coin can just get out of balance for people, and then it can make them miserable, as it did me, And so it's a really cool part of pool. It's a really cool part of life to try to get better at stuff and to try to set goals and things. But if it gets too far out of balance, it can be difficult and not good. And so I think the thing is that you and I talk about a lot with this stuff is trying to keep it in balance.
So what are the good things that long-term goals provide for you? Like, because I got to see it. Well, I think it provides you. So if you go out of balance one way, which is if you don't have goals that are driving you, then you can if you lack purpose and you lack energy, you don't have enough energy, because pool is a lot of adversity and you have to work. We talked about it in our last pod. We have to work really, really, really hard. You have to focus hard. You have to want to put the balls in the pocket. You have to have a lot of, I think everybody agrees, to be a good competitor, you have to have a tremendous amount of desire. So if you don't attach some kind of meaning to your journey, then where does the desire come from? So I'm going to give you an example. I had a student that was 75 this week, and he was a competent player and a good guy, and he played a pretty respectable game of pool. But what I noticed was he was missing a lot of random shots, and he was missing a lot of really, really, really routine shots. And so it was not just once in a while, it was almost once a run. So if he was going to run an 8-ball rack where there was maybe 2 things that had to be done carefully, like you have to get a good angle on this ball and you have to make a good pivot to get on the key ball. So maybe there was if I looked at that run, I would be there's 6 automatic shots and then 2 that involved, a little bit of care. Mm-hmm. The problem was he was capable of missing any of the shots, and not because they were difficult, but just, how did it actually, for example, ball in hand, you just miss ball in hand, shoot a ball in the side pocket and roll forward 6 inches while you shoot it into the tip. So it's well, how does that even happen? So I'm sitting here, I'm an instructor, so it's my job. He's paying me money to help him develop his pool game. And I have to figure out okay, so what I'm observing is out of the 6 shots that are as easy, and I'm talking that are as routine as rolling ball in hand at the side pocket. If you have a student that's 75% to make ball in hand, and they're missing ball in hand 1 and 4, and then they're missing their next ball in hand shot 1 and 4. What are you going to teach them? Are we going to sit here and work on our break shot, or we're going to sit here and work on jumps, or we're going to work on draw shots? There's something going on here that has to kind of be front and center, because there's really no way to develop your skills to be a great pool player if random balls are just being shot into points. So then it's like, well, where does that come from? And it's like, well, is that a fundamental thing? Is that I don't have an aiming system? It's like, no, you have ball in hand, you're rolling a ball on the side. Have you seen players like that just seem like, and they're maybe not quite present and hungry, or like what would you even think is the
okay. Yes. Like this is a piggybacking off of fake trying.
fake
Right?
trying?
So
Yep.
so because that's what I've seen with fake trying. And so I am listening to you, Demi, and I'm just thinking, and I'm thinking everybody's different, right? And everybody has a different reason for missing or for coming up short or for stumbling on their path, or everybody has their own reason and things. And so for certain people, it might not make sense because they're so hard on themselves. It might not make sense for them to turn up the hard on themselves dial and try to ask a little more from themselves, because they're so hard on themselves, they need to turn that dial down. But there's other people, like the student you're describing, I'm sitting there thinking that guy needs to turn the other dial up. He needs to turn up that dial that's asking more for himself, and not in like this negative whipping himself way, but he needs to turn up that meaning or significance dial. And a lot of times that meaning or significance comes from a place of, I need to make this shot, it's important for XYZ reasons,
Right,
and things.
right.
And so
Yes.
so there's some people that they got to, like, I had to turn that dial down.
Yep.
He has to turn that dial up,
Yes. And so this is why I'm talking about it, is because we're talking about what are the benefits and the dangers of having, the long-term, progression goal part of our game. And one thing is it supplies energy, the right goals and the right sense of purpose supplies energy. Now, he's 75, and one of the challenges that I have a lot of empathy for is that he's like, hey, I'm 75. I don't, deep down, he's wrestling with some powerful challenges, which is, I don't know if I can get better at this game. I'm 75. I just don't know physically how much time I have left and how much my body will let me do.
So I have a question. Is he saying, I'm sorry, Demi, let me interrupt, but is he saying I'm 75, I don't have the energy to try or ask more from myself anymore?
No, I think I think it was a belief issue where, like, deep down, and plus you got to understand. So he's 75. He doesn't know how many years he has left. He doesn't know how much his body will be able to do in the future. And he's probably been stuck at the same level for a few years. And he's like, so it's like hard at some point, it's hard for him to believe that he could get better. And then of course there's like, some of this we got into, some of it we didn't. Like, then there's parts of it is like, is it scary to think that you can get better because it's safer to just accept, are you afraid of wanting to get better? Are you afraid of the desire to get better because you're afraid that you're not actually going to be able to? So that it's going to create an unfulfilled desire and disappointment and hurt and sense of failure. So you're better off just telling yourself, well, realistically, I'm not going to get better. So let's just, show me some things. And maybe if I back, I'm not going to expect to get better, but if I back up into anything that helps, great. But the problem with that is if you hedge too much against disappointment, that you're afraid to try and stretch, well, then you shoot balls at the rail because you don't have any, you're not asking enough from yourself. And so that he wasn't asking enough from himself. Mm-hmm. And so I looked at it and I'm like, look, and I told him, I said, I'm not 75. So I can't speak to what it means to be 75 and have the challenges with my body and my future that you do. However, I'm not as different as he thinks because I'm 42, turning 43, but I'm also, playing at a much different level, where for me, I actually think it would be harder for me to get better with my remaining years than it would be for him to get better with his remaining years, because I play so much stronger that for what I have to do to improve is tremendously daunting. And this, I mean, so it's like, it's daunting for me to try to get better. And I'm not exactly 17 anymore. So even though I'm not 75, I'm like, I think I can understand what it means to wrestle with these questions of, can I get better? And is it okay for me to try? Or is that just going to hurt too much? And I think that one thing that I've decided to do is postpone that whole decision and say, I don't know if I can get better or not, but I'm going to find out on the table, not in my head. And I'm going to find out, you know what I mean? We're going to find out. And so it's like I've said it before, the opposite of low expectations isn't high expectations. And the opposite of high expectations isn't low expectations. The opposite of any expectations is no expectations. So I'm not saying I expect nothing from myself. And I'm not saying I expect a lot from myself. I'm saying I don't have any expectations of myself other than we're going to find out how far I can get and we're going to try my hardest. Now, so that was the symptom. My point is though, is that a couple thoughts trying to like organize this a little bit better. When a player, and I at one point I kind of motivated him. I said, look, if you're 25% to miss any random shot, and he's trying to complete this run out the way I want him to complete this whole run out, and he's shooting the first shot, or he's shooting one shot, key shot well, but then losing focus and missing a ball. I'm like, hey man, if you're 75% on every one of these shots, and then 50-50 on the two that are trickier, that's going to take you, and I pull out my calculator, I'm like, that's going to take you 115 tries to run through these balls. Is that good enough for you? Because if you want to do this in less than 115 tries, you're going to have to ask a little bit more on these routine shots.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
let's just look at what it's going to take to run these
Yeah.
balls out. Like, you need to get it to where it's 75% of those two shots and 95 on the rest, and then you can do it in 3 tries.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
4 tries.
Yeah.
And, you know, so anyway, and something about that may have it's a little motivating to think
Yeah.
about. So, okay, zooming way out on our main topic, my point is, with a lack of purpose and goal comes a lack of energy and drive and, you know, and effort. And without some drive and purpose and effort, you can become a guy that just shoots random balls at the rail. And at that point, there's nothing else to talk about. There's no YouTube video to watch. And this is something that I find really, this is like the most passionate I've been, is this moment in our conversation is there's all this YouTube content and all this teaching and all this instruction about like, well, here's how you play shape here, and here's a trick when you're frozen on the rail, and here's how you shoot when you're trying to draw your ball, and here's a good timing of a swing. It's like, yeah, all the content out there, it talks about stuff that the control-y part of the brain wants to learn about to feel so knowledgeable. But yet some of the most profound, important things are like, what's driving you to make that routine shot, and what's driving you to stay focused? Because without that crap set up right, it's like this guy came to me for instruction. I want to help him, but it's like, for us to be, and you know, for him to have this conversation with me and then ask me about the break, I'm like, how are you asking me about the break shot right now? Like, the only thing we should be talking about is like, we should be exploring your narratives and be exploring where your sense of purpose is and why is this matter to you? And what does it mean? What would it mean to you if you played 10 more years and never got any better and kept missing random shots, versus what would it mean to you if you've plugged these leaks and then played better than you've ever played before? And I'm like, the good news is these weaknesses are great. Like, I'm not here beating the guy up. I'm being very empathetic and compassionate, but I'm also saying, this is great.
Mm-hmm.
Man, if I missed 3 random shots a rack, that would be great. Like, think of how easy it is to get it.
Yeah.
The irony is he's concerned that maybe I don't know if I can get better. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know if you can get better? Just thinking the fact that you're not sure if you can get better is resulting in a lack of purpose. It's allowing you to miss 3 ball in hands a rack. So how could you not get better?
Yeah.
If you suddenly said, hey, wait a second, if I believed I could get better and it mattered to me, I might be able to only miss ball in hand once a rack. I just tripled my price. You could get 3 times better.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
how can you think you're at a dead end here?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's
so these are the benefits of goals. The benefits of goals is, number one, goals have to provide energy, purpose, and drive. You have to have a fire in your belly. And that comes from striving to improve. And it could be specific goals, like I want to be this far, I want to beat that guy, or it could be progress goals, like I want to be able to draw my ball, or that's still kind of result goal. It could be progress goals, like I'd like to be able to do things better than I do them now. So, and then those two are attached, right? Like if you say, I would like to be able to draw more effortlessly, or I'd like to be able to bank with more confidence, or I'd like to be able to shoot shots off the rail more comfortably. Well, then that should also tie into results. Like I'd like to see my straight pool run go from 20 to 30 to 40, right?
Yeah.
So result goals, process, you have to have process goals, result goals, and they should attach to each other, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those are some of the benefits of goals.
Yeah.
And then the rewards of goals, the healthy, what are some of the healthy pleasures of goals? Not the unhealthy pleasures. What are the healthy pleasures of goals?
Well, you're asking like the unhealthiest goal person in the world, healthy pleasures of goals. Well, that's a good one, Dem. Well, okay, I'll just tell you what I just got to share what I'm thinking. So yeah. I don't know if it's going to answer your question, but So I have a goal when I to not quit. And so my goal with pool right now is I don't want to quit again. I want to play pool. Like I enjoy playing pool. I like playing pool. I put a lot of years into it. I'm like, so I look at it and say, that's my, it's almost like a, I don't know if that would be a process goal or if that would be a result goal.
You don't want to approach and pursue this game in a way that's going to drive you to misery and quitting. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to find a path that's sustainable.
Yeah. So I find when I play now and I want to play again after I'm done, like I've reached my goal. Like I am crushing my goals.
Yeah, it's an approach process goal.
Yeah.
You want to approach the game in such a way that you can be excited to play again the next day.
Yeah. And then when I achieve that, then I have reached my goal, and then I'm like proud and I feel good and I feel energized and I feel like I've accomplished something, like why do people climb mountains? Like they want to get to the top or whatever.
And the funny part is that is a performance goal. It doesn't feel like it because you can sit there and say, well, that has nothing to do with how good or bad I played. But I'm like, no. But in terms of like, if you look at one session, it's not a performance goal. But in terms of career management and career accomplishments and career trajectory, you can't. You don't grow. It would be like, and I'm not joking at all. I'm dead serious. Like it would be like somebody who's battling depression, making it a goal to not kill themselves and say that's off the table. I have to find a way to live to where I'm not going to be in danger of ending my life. Like that's a serious goal because it's like, well, how is that a growth goal? Not killing yourself. Well, if you give up, if you kill yourself, you deny yourself the opportunity to grow in any other ways. It's almost like the underlying requirement of growth is that you stay in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So by saying I was really struggling with the way I approached this game, it was really difficult to the point where I couldn't continue down the road at times. Well, then finding a way to say, I'm going to approach this game in a way to where I'm not going to allow myself to do anything or feel anything, or, I'm not going to allow myself to go down any paths that's going to lead me to not wanting to continue to play.
Yeah.
I think that's a major goal.
Yeah. It is a goal. And it's a career management thing for me. So it's like, I feel like when I play pool, I have no goals. Like I don't like have any physical goals or any sort of results goals. I mean, obviously I want to play well today.
So look under your seat because we got something for you.
That's right. So of course, I that's a part of playing pool, and I still have that fire. But my overall main goal is like not quitting, but that's more of like, and that's like an overall like meta strategy and sort of career management thing for me. So then when I make decisions around that goal, it's like, well, most of the time I play pool, it's with Demi because I look back at 30 years of pool, and that's the most joy I have is when I'm playing pool with you. And so I try to like put myself in winning positions from that standpoint. Like you asked me to go to a tournament in June, and I'm like, oh man, bar table 10 ball. I haven't played bar table 10 ball forever. But then I stopped and paused, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. I just want to go with you to a tournament, hang out, drive, have fun, do what we used to do. So like, that's not going to make me want to stop playing pool going out there with you. So this fits sort of my goal, or my overall strategy. So
perfect.
Anyways,
And so my thought on the best way to explain a healthy use of goals to provide is, I thought about this, because I've got some kids and you've got some kids, and maybe I've shared this with you in the past, but I've thought about this a lot. I think a healthy goal looks like this. Suppose you're walking with your kids in a park, and you are, 100, maybe you're a couple 100 feet away from your car, and you say, race you to the car, and everybody starts racing to the car. So all of a sudden, what happens is you start racing and your kids are running and everyone starts smiling and laughing, and you're running and they're running, and then you get a lead, and then they're like, I'm going to catch you. And then you like pretend to fall and you stumble, and then they laugh and gleefully giggle as they pass you. And then you get up and try to catch them, and then they get scared and they're running and laughing. And then you almost catch them, and then they get to the car door, and it's like everyone's laughing. And it was fun. And I've thought about that experience, and I'm like, what is at the car? What is the purpose? Like, what is at the car? Well, there's nothing at the car, because whoever gets there first is going to wait for the other people to catch up anyway. We're all leaving at the same time. There's no cash reward. Nobody's live streaming. I'm not going to post on Facebook like, hey, here's a selfie of me at the car before my kids got there. Like none of that crap, right? It's just, so what was the purpose of the car? There's nothing. There's nothing at the car. But so what is the car? Well, without the car, we couldn't have had this race because we needed an arbitrary finish line that was it was arbitrary and it was meaningless. But what did we do is we assigned it meaning so that we could create a track to have this experience of racing and laughing. And so I've thought about that a lot. And it's like, without the car, we can't have that race. And so when I think about pool goals, if we don't have pool goals and we're just slapping balls around, not only do we not get to feel the joy of progression and advancement and, setting new high runs and developing ourselves, and we deprive ourselves of the opportunity to grow, which is meaningful. But we also take out all the energy and purpose to where we just kind of become shells slapping balls around. Like we don't hit peak states. We don't experience, the joy of challenging ourselves and overcoming it because we're not really engaging with it. It's like we need a purpose to create a path. It's like the fun of pool is racing down a path of progress and improvement towards something. And so we need a goal, not only to provide the energy and purpose and desire, but just to give us to define the course. We have to define the challenges. Like if it's fun to overcome challenges, well, then we need to create challenges to overcome. So I guess one way of saying that is a goal. Like if you were to play pool and you break the balls, the challenges are there to overcome. You've got balls on the table, there's pockets, there's stuff in the way, there's a set of challenges to overcome. Well, the goal creates career challenges to overcome, which is, boy, I need to develop skills that I don't have. And I need to get out of my comfort zone in ways when you set a goal, you're creating a set of challenges that you're going to have to navigate over a certain long-term period of time. And so that's what a goal does for you, is it creates a track and it creates a course, so to speak, of adversity that you get to test yourself again. That's fun and meaningful.
And then we've talked about this before, I'm sure, but like the one thing I would add about goals is that, once you have that track and that purpose and that thing that car that you're running to, then set, of course, process goals. Like that's what keeps you moving, and that's what keeps you sane, and that's what keeps you from getting down the ego hole and stuff like that, is putting together a lot of process goals along the way. So
yeah, and I've got a coach's corner, so once again, check out my YouTube, mnpoolbootcamp.com or MN Pool Bootcamp on YouTube, and go to goals. I think I have goals part A and B. I talked about the soldier versus the commander. I've talked about, the map versus when you're driving versus the steering wheel. There's some cool things about goals and process goals versus result goals. So reference that.
Yep.
So then what happens though is that people set these goals because the goals they set, you have meaning in the immediate short term of hitting balls in, and you have the joy of facing longer term adversity and scrambling and developing yourself. And all of those things come into focus when you have a purpose, which is created by a goal. So the track is defined and your drive is, your energy is, your gas tank is filled, all by the right goals and the right purpose. That's all good stuff. So where does it go rogue? Where does it go bad? And I will say, I think we have a culture that in our culture, people are absolutely lose sight of those things, and it becomes about ego. It becomes about how good am I? Who am I better? My value is my ability as a pool player, or my value is my ability to beat players or win tournaments, or to have other people be intimidated by me, or have other people afraid of me, or have other people praise me, or what are the railbirds saying about me, and all these other things. It's like, look at me, look at how good I am, look at how far I've come, look at this, look at me, I'm so good. And there's a way that you can kind of feed off your perception of how good you are or what others think of you. And I think that's where a lot of people get out of balance. And it's not one person. It's like everybody, right? Everybody kind of gets out of balance. Don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, I was out of balance. Like, I get it. Yeah.
And that's why I'm so worried. Like when I posted that YouTube video and I get 2,700 views, all of a sudden I'm like, I am like, I'm
Influencer.
famous,
Yeah, you're famous, yeah.
I'm on the, it's like, yeah, listen to me. I have a podcast. I'm on the radio.
Yeah,
It's like, so,
yeah.
but it's very easy to get, we can easily derive an ego pleasure in our sense of accomplishment. And it's really, really, sometimes it starts kind of from a pure spot, which is it would be fun to go try to accomplish these things and grow. And then when you get it, there's this little ego part where it's like, that was nice. And it goes from being kind of this wholesome pleasure to kind of like this, kind of secretive feeding on this something. So, okay, I'm kind of getting too vague. I need to get focused here. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of people get lost in that. They're wearing Moscone Cup jerseys with their last name on them, posting up videos of themselves beating the 9-ball ghost. This ties into what we were talking about with social media influence. It's like, listen, I kind of have my premise is this. Most people are kind of broken and suffering. It's the human condition. We're all lonely. We are all insignificant because the universe is really, really big and we're kind of almost meaningless pieces of it. And so we're all struggle with feelings of insignificance and loneliness and suffering. And that we are looking for ways to feel relevant and significant. And we're looking for ways to feel better. And we're looking for ways to either distract ourselves from the tragedy of the human existence or to actually medicate ourselves from our suffering. And when we find that, hey, when I made that shot, a lot of people applauded me or told me how good I was, or how good did I look when I jumped that ball in, and then I put it on YouTube, and now 5,000 people gave me a like because of it. That makes me feel even better about myself. That there's a seductive I think a lot of people are broken and suffering, and that they're medicating by feeding on their ego of their accomplishments, their progress, and how good they look and how good they are. I think that's what I think.
And what do you do with that, Dem?
And I think that unfortunately, when people start going down that road, they get out of balance to where they lose track of the joy of the healthy joy of the game, both in the short term and in the healthy goals. They forget that they're not having fun racing towards the car. They're not having fun laughing with their kids. They're like, all they care about is getting to the finish line and how they're going to look with their selfie, or how good they're going to look, or who thinks what about them, or what do they think about themselves. And this is why they care. And then what happens is, here's exactly how this plays out. It takes away all the joy from the game because they've divorced themselves from any kind of healthy joy from the game because they're just perpetually looking at it from an accomplishment perspective. The second thing is it actually sabotages performance because they start putting so much pressure on the results because, man, if I win this match, then I get to tell everyone I won. Whereas if I lost this match, I lose status in terms of what I think people are going to think about me. And then I don't get, so think about it, if you're an opium addict, you're going to get very, very protective about your stash. And you're going to care a lot about whether or not if you're playing a pool tournament, and if you win the pool tournament, you can afford to go get your fix. And if you don't win the pool tournament, you're going to be chilling to the night and shivering and whatever. Then you're going to have a lot of pressure on you because you're going to be in hell or heaven that night, depending on if you perform
the outcomes. Well. Yeah.
And so I think that people that feed on ego accomplishment, it's the same story. If I perform well, then I get to feed on my accomplishments tonight and what that guy said about me afterwards, and how, this guy paid me that compliment, and how good I look shooting that ball, and how good of a winner I am. You get to spin the story about how good you are to yourself and feed on that. And if you lose, then it's horrible and you don't get to do that. And it's a threat. And then you have to punish yourself for that so that you can try to force yourself to become a winner in the future so that you can get your fix next time. And so you know that you're fighting for your psychic well-being tonight. And there's a ton of pressure that you create. And so it doesn't really lead well to performance in the short term because of the pressure you create. And it doesn't really develop you in the long term because it could really sap your energy. And you just think, oh, well, I'm motivating myself by attaching a lot of meaning to this stuff. But it's actually really, really, really fatiguing to be perpetually living in fear and living in self-abuse and self-loathing is actually very fatiguing. And so it's like, you could sit there and say, well, I'm motivating myself because I have these goals that I'm attaching so much meaning for. I'm whipping myself and whipping myself. But it's like, yeah, you can say you're motivating yourself, but man, when you to me, what you're doing is sucking all the joy out of the game and making yourself fatigued by self-abuse and discouragement. And so to me, that you can do it that way, but it would be like, which workforce do you want to bet on? Do you want to bet on the workforce with the heavy-handed managers that's beating the crap out of everybody and threatening to fire people? Or do you want to bet on the workforce where people are going in and laughing and having fun doing what they're doing? And it's like, I find that when you lose the ego feeding and you try to live a more healthy, joyful pool game, like I find that enthusiasm and childlike, wonder tends to be a much higher energy and more positive trajectory than self-abuse and, fear and discouragement and self-loathing. So that's exactly the trap I see. You asked me a question, it's like, what do you do from there? But I'm just trying to define, like, here's why I think people are addicts to ego. I think that they go down this path because we're all broken and suffering, and we get addicted to this crap, and we lose sight of the joy of the game, and then we end up just being perpetually miserable trying to serve the next goal, the next accomplishment. And when do we get to the part where we get to win big so that we get our next fix? And it's too bad, man. It's too bad. I mean, go, if you have anything.
No, I just was thinking back to when I started playing pool when I was 13. I watched The Color Money. I saw it on TV. He was winning, and every time he was unbeatable basically, and the Hustler the same. They had some adversity, but in general. So then I started playing pool, Demi, and I specifically remember playing pool at 13 years old and thinking, I feel good about nothing. I didn't play sports growing up. I didn't have any friends. I was a complete lone wolf and shy and all these things. And I just remember actually picking up a cue and making balls and having people immediately tell me I was special or significant. And it just, that's how I got into pool, because I had significance. I didn't have significance with my family. I didn't have significance with my brothers and sisters, no one in school, nothing. I had zero significance. But when I picked up a pool cue and I could beat adults at 13, all of a sudden I was like a mini celebrity around the arcades and the places I played. And it was like a complete ego feed for me, and I was so underrolled emotionally with like that it was just like, I was really susceptible to the drug, man. And so I played like that, and then I just would whip myself, right? Because that was my drug. I just would whip myself, and I would go do that, shoot over the ball for 1,000 times. And I would go and just grind and practice and play and compete and just work that cycle, and it was like, for me, it got me to a certain level and everything. So it has effectiveness. But then as I got older, I realized, when I was 18 or 19, I quit because I was a busted out junkie, like emotionally. I just was a complete busted out junkie. And I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I'm so miserable emotionally. And then I came back to it later and played again and went through all those things.
And I'll just share, I had the exact same, not the exact same experience, but like basically I was an addict too. Same story. I was the youngest child. So I've always wondered about birth order. It's a different conversation but anyway, as we were both youngest children, I was the youngest child. I had a lot to prove. I was never as, smart or capable or competent as my older siblings because I was too young and had too much of a developmental disadvantage. So I was looking for an opportunity to prove my relevance, and it wasn't going to be scholastic or, anything like that. And so when I got into pool, there was something like, wow, look at this. Here's a game that I can learn to play. And like you say, adults, you can start running tables and everyone's like, man, you're really good for a kid. And look at this. And you're really good. And and then, there was a lot of it was, internal pressure and I started getting off I was going to be the best pool player in the world. And I had these really expansive, lofty goals. And I'm like, that's going to make me, different than other people and better than other people and more special than other people. And then everybody's going to know that I'm the special one and all this crap. And it's like, for sure, I would bought into that. And the way it played out was that I whipped myself mercilessly. And I actually thought of it like I steered into pain for 5 years, where every time I was consciously aware of a fork in the road of what I could do, I was like, I made it hurt worse. Because I thought that competition was wading through the depths of hell, and that most people like a contest of who can hold a cigarette on their palm the longest before they pull back, and that the way you're going to be better than everyone else was by going through more suffering than everybody else. So I was going to steer into the pain and say, bring it on, make it worse, because I felt like I was burning away my competition until I was the only person left, because nobody wanted it as much as nobody was going to suffer the amount I was going to suffer, because nobody wanted it like I was going to want it. So that was how I lived for 5 years. And then I just I kind of like you did. It's like I had a profound revelation where it's like, I don't want my life to be like this for another 50 years. So I caused myself so much pain that eventually I aborted. I quit pool, and I just never played that way again. And then when I stumbled back into pool years later, two big things changed. And one was I knew that I was never going to play pool like that again. Like I didn't want to go down that road. Because I'd already gone down that road. I went down that road far enough to know what that road was, and that I didn't want it. And so kind of like you're saying, like I just didn't want to live that way. And then two, I met a guy that we both know pretty well that I used to play a lot with, and he, very interesting chap, but he changed my life in the sense that he really called my attention to a lot of these games that people play with ego, and I learned a little bit from him about that, and then learned from my own experiences that that's not what I wanted. So I feel very hypocritical, and I'm sure we're both a little hypocritical. Like now I'm sure we're both feeling conflicted talking about it, because it's like, if I understand the value of ego sobriety to any extent, it's because I was such a raging, like I destroyed my life and rock bottom. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I have multiple times myself, like more than once. I've egoed myself to rock bottom multiple times. So, and I think the reason why we're sharing this, Demi, is because we just, like, we can own that we've been through that, and we can say this is why we're talking about these subjects, because we've gone through it ourselves, and we're just kind of trying to help people to realize, like, I think what I would hope that we're trying to help people is to try to become, look at self-awareness and just say, okay, what are my motivations? Why am I doing this? And what are the reasons behind it? And what are some things that I can do if I'm getting down those paths and all that. And then also I kind of like the discussion of, like, I've gone the other way, Debbie, where I got so far away from it that I got into like fake trying and doing all this stuff and just going through the motions, and because I was so afraid
the same way that my last student was
relapsing.
The same way my last student was afraid of setting goals, maybe because he wasn't sure he could hit them. It's like you can get to the spot where you're so afraid of your own addiction to ego that you just are afraid of trying anymore because you don't want to go down that road again.
Yeah, and so we could talk about. We can talk about Goggins real quick, because
go ahead.
So I don't know if you guys know David Goggins or heard of David Goggins, but he's a guy. He's got an awesome story. He was just a busted out guy that was 300 pounds. He had already been in the military once and sort of quit out of a special, kind of like a lower level special forces program in the Air Force. Anyways, and then so he was out of the military and he was spraying for cockroaches. He was 300 pounds, and he saw a Navy SEALs thing on the History Channel. And I think he was probably pretty depressed living his life, and he turned himself around, and he went through hell. I mean, his story is an incredible story of perseverance and just will to just achieve his goals that he set out. And so he ends up becoming a Navy SEAL, and then he ends up breaking a pull-up record, and he ends up going through Ranger training, and his resume is just absolutely out of this world. And then he's ran so many ultra marathons, like 50 to 100 mile, 240 mile races. The guy's he's absolutely just beast mode. One of the toughest mentally toughest guys that's ever walked the planet, in my opinion. And so that's great, and it's cool, and it's fun to hear about. And so I got into Goggins at some point because I was so afraid of ego and that I was quitting. I wasn't necessarily quitting pool, but I was not asking enough of myself.
You weren't all in when you were playing.
I wasn't all in when I was playing, and I wasn't all in anything in my life. I didn't want to bump up against
and
that.
The analogy I think about is like kind of like if you're a 6 foot, if you have some developmental thing where you're like 8 years old and you're 6 feet and 250 pounds, it's like
mice and men. Yeah,
you have to be afraid of when you play with your friends. You can't just roughhouse with your friends because you're so much bigger and stronger. So you gotta have to be careful. Like I feel like you and I were such ego addicts that we're supposedly in recovery, that like we have to be very careful about how we motivate ourselves, because we don't want to go down these dark paths again. But then that can lead to like being too tentative, and so you were maybe too tentative.
That's way too tentative. Yeah.
You're afraid. It's like you're afraid of your own strength. You're afraid of your own capabilities. You're afraid of your own fire. Like there's a healthy fire and there's a healthy passion, but you can become afraid of your own desires because you know what it could go if you just got to balance the other way.
Yeah. And so I found myself in a position in my life where I'd stopped goal setting. Like I literally made a decision that I don't want to set any more goals in my life because I don't want to get caught in that whipping thing about I have to make this goal or this is my significance, this is my importance. So I was kind of a little bit rudderless, honestly, for years, just rudderless. And somehow I stumbled against Goggins. He was on like Joe Rogan or something. And then I started listening to what he had to say and it landed with me and it got me back to, pushing myself to really, because he pushed himself to extreme levels and he encourages other people to do the same for real specific reasons. And it super landed with me. And I got into Goggins and I started running really far distances and I started pushing myself and waking up really early in the morning and doing all these things. And I needed that at that time, Demi, in my life to make that course correction. And with Goggins, and when I went through that process, for me personally, I don't know how much
you needed some Goggins.
Yeah, I kind of needed some Goggins in my life, and that's what I think we're talking about, Demi. And now I don't need Goggins in my life. Like I literally, I did it. Like I worked for a year or two and I ran a shit ton of miles and woke up really early and pushed myself and but then I started realizing, Demi, that I was over the other side again. Like I was on the dark side where I was right back to where I kind of started, and not fully, but kind of, right? And so then that led into my pool game where I had my table in my garage and I had like marks on the wall of all the games I was going to play and I was going to Goggins my way through pool. And then it just kind of, it didn't work anymore, and I got stuck again. But the thing that I would say, Dem, just to wrap up on the Goggins thing, not to defend him or not defend him or whatever, but the one thing that I was thinking about, because Demi and I talk about Goggins, and I want Demi to talk about the Goggins thing too, is that not my defense of him or myself with using his kind of platform or his program or his mindset. I would just say that I have so much quit in me that I needed it, and that's really what I get from that mindset or that mentality, is that I need to face that quitting mind. And now when I play, I'm facing my quitting mind, but not whipping myself to keep going. It's more from a joyful, loving way. I want myself to keep going. I don't want to quit. Do you know what I'm saying, Dem? It's different now.
Yeah. And I think that not everybody knows what Goggins' message is. So I will give you, I've only listened to about half an hour of him because I find him repulsive for this reason, which is the first interview I heard of him, he was talking about some marathon and how he's going to run 100 miles and how nothing was going to, basically he's kind of got this like, here's what's going to happen. You set your goals bigger than anyone ever thought. And then you don't take no for an answer, and you push yourself and you make it happen. No excuses, no whining. And kind of like this, just, I don't care if it's miserable. I don't care if it's unpleasant. I don't care if it's fun. I don't care if
you run on broken legs.
Yeah. So he told a story about how he's going to run 100 miles, and somewhere around 74 miles, and he like either broke his foot or sprained his ankle, or broken foot or broken leg. And he basically forced himself to finish 26 more miles. And every step was painful because he's like, this is how winners do it, kid, is you just don't quit. Mm-hmm. And you just don't, nothing stops you, and nothing you're relentless and nothing gets between you and your goal. And the problems I have is twofold. Number one, when you're talking about how he's like the best in the world as far as mental toughness, and like you said it like that's a compliment. And I guess I would look at that like it's a league. And I would say, why are we measuring best in the world based on mental toughness? Why aren't we measuring best in the world based on who's leading a fulfilled, meaningful life? Now, there's a lot of overlap, right? Obviously, he's got a lot of purpose. He's helped a lot of people. He's achieved a lot. He's had a lot of joy in his life. And so, but to me, it's like, why are we measuring who our heroes are by, how much misery they put themselves through, and look at them. I just, that's not how I keep score. And so that doesn't speak to me. Number one. Number two is that here's maybe the whole point of this is that, and I've talked about it before, it's on my coach's corner. If you want to look up the happiness paradox, on my YouTube channel, and Pool Bootcamp on YouTube. I'm really pushing for subscribers. Help me, help me. Anyway, but the point is that where it gets funny is ultimately, if at a like, why do we play pool level? It's to have fun, and there's fun in playing, and there's fun in growing. But it's ultimately to accumulate, to bring joy into our life. That is why we're trying to play. And what happens is, if you're not willing, what we're basically talking about is trading off the short term and the long term. And if you're not willing to do anything in the short term that is challenging or not immediately pleasurable, then if you're saying I'm only going to play when I feel like it, for as long as I feel like it, doing parts of the game I'm good at, that I enjoy, that make me feel good and happy, well, you can do that, and you might have fun hitting balls for 10 minutes today, but that's not going to lead you down. You're depriving yourself of tremendous universes of joy that you could have from setting goals and progressing and achieving bigger things and seeing yourself develop and overcoming those challenges and turning into people that can do things. Like, you're missing out on a lot of joy. But on the other hand, if you say to yourself, all the joy from pool is to be found from achievement and success and goals, so therefore I am going to sacrifice my joy from today so that in the future I hit some big goal and get some big joy payoff. Well, then what happens is, you're miserable today, you're miserable tomorrow, you're miserable the next day, and you think, so I'm going to be miserable every day as I strive towards this external goal. But once I get there, look at me, I'm going to get the mother load payoff, and I'm going to have more joy than anybody. And what ends up happening is, you just are miserable, and you form, and not only are you miserable every day, and so you leak away a lot of joy that you could be having, but that you form a habit of being miserable and discontent and unsatisfied. And that even if you think you hit those goals, as soon as you hit those goals, you feed on them for a minute, it tastes like eating garbage.
It's like eating cotton candy.
Yeah, and immediately you're just dissatisfied and want the next fix. And so basically it leads to perpetual, dissatisfaction and misery at the table. So then my question is, if your goal is to actually get the most joy out of the game, there's got to be a balance between striving for things that are going to bring growth and joy along the road and in the future. But I have a non-negotiable, kind of like you have I'm not going to do anything that won't make me quit. I'm not going to do anything that's going to deprive my joy from this game. I love the game. When I play, non-negotiable, I'm going to have fun when I play. And so I'm all about striving and working and trying to get better, but I'm not willing to sacrifice my today's joy. And so when I hear Goggins' message, which is kind of like, to me, who cares how you feel? You need to get the results and get it done. I'm mixed on that, because I guess my question is there's two different questions. So here they are. One, do you have to sacrifice your joy today to achieve long-term growth and success? And two, even if you did, would it be worth it? So, so like, for example, if you had a 13-year-old that just loved to play and was getting better and enjoyed the process of playing and striving and competing, would they have to be miserable, or could they just enjoy that process? And is it possible that they could be joyous and still get to the highest levels of pool? And I've thought about this a lot because I've been coaching kids, and I think they can. I would say, I think it's possible. Like, I don't, because you and I both did it the hypocritical way, where we both did it the Goggins way to get where we got. And now, once we've achieved all that, now we're like, well, now we get to be the Buddha.
Yeah, exactly.
But we Goggins it to get it where we got, and now we could sit back and try to be Zen. But like, I actually have seen the new generation of kids that are coming along, and I think that now they have a lot in common, right, with Goggins' message, because so they have to have goals, and they have to drive themselves relentlessly, and they have to work hard, and they have to have, they have to be driven, and they have to put in hard work, and they have to be willing to sacrifice short-term pleasure and do things that are difficult, like practicing with a jump cue for an hour, or for a month straight, or whatever they have to do. But like, they engage with that in a more joyous way, as opposed to they find joy and meaning and purpose in that road, not misery. Not, I'm going to be miserable on this road and someday it'll pay off. And I think it can look the same if you watch people's behavior hour by hour, like the way that Fedor trained. I think that he's obviously very, very, very driven, to where he's prepared to do whatever it takes to achieve the goals he needs to achieve. but that he's doing it because he actually enjoys that process and working that hard and pushing himself that hard and seeing those improvements. And he enjoys that process. I don't think it's because I don't think he sacrificed his joy for the game to do what he did. I don't think so. Now it's hard. Who am I to know what Federer's heart is? Well, I think once you've been an addict long enough, you can kind of tell when other people are using or not.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think that Federer was using the way I was using. That's what I think.
No, that's fair.
I think that there's a way to achieve the Goggins output without sacrificing, while finding joy in adversity as opposed to accepting misery in the adversity. I think either way, you have to have a bring on the adversity. I love adversity. I'm going to overcome adversity kind of way. But I think the one way of embracing adversity is to say, I'm going to hate this, but someday I'll be at the top of the mountain and I'll take a selfie and it'll be worth it. The other way is, God damn, I love it when it's hard. And I try to embrace more of I love it when it's hard, as opposed to I hate this, but someday it'll pay off.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm just trying to think about like what I've listened to hundreds of hours of the guy. I'm just trying to think about his retort, or I don't need to defend him. I'm just
no.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. Cause I think that some of his message though, Dem, is that he is joyful in that moment, that miserable moment.
Fair.
So that's it. It's like, yeah. I mean, I ran far with a bad leg due to Goggins. Okay. And I'm trying to think like how much joy was I feeling and how much misery was I feeling and how much pain, and then how much of it was the payoff that I knew that I was going to make it, that I was not going to give up. Right. Like I could have given up many, many times. And so I'm just trying to think like how much of that, like I've done it twice. I've done 30 twice. And the first time I did it was really bad. And I got it done. And part of my motivation was I told a couple people I was going to do it, and I didn't want to like say, oh, I stopped, so, but it's like, so is it ego? Is it probably, but then part of it is the joy of like setting a goal and just fighting through that adversity and that pain and not giving up. Yeah. So I'm not exactly sure, Dem. Honestly, it's like there is ego, but it's like, is it all ego? Is it a percentage of ego? And then
but I don't know that that's ego. Is finding purpose and overcoming adversity and saying I'm not going to let this adversity stop me from doing what I need to do. I think that could be growth and perseverance as opposed. And I've thought a lot about. I mean, obviously this has been a big part of my life is trying to navigate this. What I would say is this: I think that not only can you get out of balance both ways. You will get out of balance both ways if you're a competitor. If you are a competitor, you will find yourself on both sides of this. And so I think it's good to know what are the symptoms on each side, and then what levers do you pull when you're out of balance.
Yeah.
And I think that when you're out of balance on the ego side, it's like eating cotton candy. Like you said, it's eating cookies. It's like, is it okay to have a cookie? Yes. And so what I think about that is like, if I win a tournament and I have, somebody pay me a compliment I'll just, it stuck out because Bert Canister was one of my favorites, and he was down in Chicago when we played that tournament. And we had a good run. You took third. I ended up winning in the finals. We both performed well. And so Bert Canister walks by, and I told him earlier he was a big hero of mine. And he walked by and he said, looks like all the money's going back to Minnesota. And anyway, and I just remember like that felt really good. And so then the question is, what do you do with that? Because you can enjoy that like a cookie. You can say that tasted good, or you can like covet that and like put that in a trophy case of compliments, and then in your mind review those things, and every night lay awake and think about all the things that people have said and just feed on that. So it's like you can have a cookie and enjoy the cookie, or you can like eat a box of Oreos. And so I just kind of feel like for me, one symptom that you're out of balance on the ego side is that you're feeding, you're deriving secret pleasure in your quiet thoughts of your mind, feeding on what other people are saying about you, or what that guy thought of you, or how good you looked against that guy, or whatever. And then the other symptom is that you're miserable most of the time. I think that if you're perpetually miserable and then trying to pay yourself off with little fixes of ego feeds, that would be a symptom that you're probably putting too much weight into the ego side of things. And that's not a you thing. That's like, it's a competitive thing, but it's also a cultural thing. I think as a culture, we're really, really far out of balance that way.
Yeah.
And I think social media is making it worse. I think handicap tournaments are making it worse because it gives people more and more and more chances to like play make believe and feed on accomplishment and look at me. And it's kind of gross to me. But anyway, those are some symptoms that you're out of balance that way. Any other symptoms besides misery and ego feeding? That's good.
No, I really think that the misery part is a big one, Dem.
Yeah,
I do. Because if you're feeling more joy, likely it's less ego.
well, this ties right into where when I talked about mental game, and one of my favorite coaches corners that I wish everyone would listen to is my mental game 1 and 2, part 1A, part 1B, or whatever on attitude towards adversity on my coaches corner on my YouTube. It's attitude towards adversity, and I basically say, I really think that if you have negative emotions, that's a sign you're doing something wrong, looking at something wrong. I think that when you're in a good state of mind, you're like happy, present, joyful. And then when you're fearful, raging, or self-critical, loathing, I think those are signs that you're doing something wrong, looking at something wrong. So, okay. So presence of negative emotions and ego feeding. Okay. That's a sign that you're out of balance that way. But then the sign that you're out of balance the other way would be like fake trying, missing, not really having enough effort or energy, not having a purpose, not having, if you find yourself drifting where you don't have direction, you don't have fire in your belly, you don't have goals that you're striving for that are bringing you, if you're not waking up out of bed with passion to go pursue something that means something to you, and then at the table, you find yourself disengaged to where you're kind of trying, but then if it doesn't work, I guess it wasn't my day.
As soon as adversity comes up for me, like when I faced adversity, I would want to bolt. I'd want to bolt. Like I literally wouldn't want to be there anymore.
This isn't fun. I wanted it easy. Yeah. So when people are kind of like, when you're kind of like disengaged and directionless, I think that's an example of when you lack purpose and you need, and then your challenges. And so when you're ego feeding, then there's a question of like what to troubleshoot, what do you do when you find yourself. So now when you're out of balance. If you lack purpose, you're probably fake trying, and you need more goals and achievement. You need more of the Goggins element without sacrificing your joy. And then when you're on the other end, when you're on the ego feeding end, you need more joy without sacrificing the purpose and the drive. And so that's how to know when you're out of balance. Then how do you fix it? And so then how do you fix it? In the end, it's like, I feel like we're almost wrapping up our podcast, and it's like, man, this is not a quick fix. This is a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
But at least if by talking about it, at least if people understand the journey they're on.
Yeah.
And maybe they can start figuring it out,
Yeah.
And ultimately we all have to find our own path. But I think for me, I think that the answer can be kind of like your answer to hitting center ball. It can be as simple as adjust so that you hit the center. I would say if you're ego feeding and miserable, then the adjustment can be as simple as the one that Josh made, where you say, I'm not sacrificing my joy. I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to put myself in a spot where I'm unhappy and quitting. And that's a combination of our strategies.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, if you find yourself directionless and disengaged, fake trying, the answer could be, I'm not going to accept a lackluster performance for myself. I'm not going to accept drifting. I am going to, do some thought as far as
where I ask more from myself.
How can I ask more? Where do I want to be in a year? And what am I capable of doing? And now I need to demand a little bit more for myself. Yeah. So you can demand some more from yourself if you're disengaged, and you can say without being miserable about it. And then how that plays out at a granular level, that's like a life quest of spiritual pursuit. And but at least you can know the game you're playing. So I would say that 99% of the people listening to this are probably ego addicts, because you and I are, and we struggle. And so I think it's a cultural thing. Mm-hmm. And so I think that we, but one of the reasons it's important not to get out of balance the other way, the disengaged, not trying way, is because one of the biggest ways that the ego refuse, one of the biggest reasons why people refuse, the ego's best defense is, well, you need me to make you miserable, otherwise you'll never have any drive. And so you have to be prepared for that. And you have to say, no, I can provide drive and ambition and striving and pursuit because I enjoy that, not because I'm going to do it because I enjoy it, not because I hate it. That's it. Cool, man. Well, that was a heck of a pod. Thanks for coming over, Josh. That's what was on my mind.
Yeah.
Anything else on yours before we end this thing?
No, I'm glad. I like our conversations, Dem, and a lot of our conversations are just about starting the conversation and getting people thinking about this stuff. And, you know, if anyone has any more specific questions or want to not push back, but like ask, I would say email Demi and or
mnpoolbootcamp.com, info@mnpoolbootcamp.com.
And I think because everyone's experiences are so different, but so similar too, it's like, I think if people have questions, send some questions in and we'll go over your questions a little bit too. You know, if you hear some of this and you're like, yeah, but what about this? Or I'm struggling with this. Can you speak on that? Like, that's totally good. That's fine. That gives us a direction to go to.
Come at me, bro.
Yeah, come at me, bro. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Josh.
We'll thank you, Dan.
And hey, we're going to be in Wisconsin on June 11th. So if at some tournament somewhere. So
and Mad Apple, bro.
Mad Apple. Yes. Thank you. We're going to be at the Mad Apple June 11th playing some bar table handicap 10 ball. How did I anyway?
How'd you rope us into that?
I don't even understand. My first bar table handicap tournament for 5 years. So we're going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
All right. Talk soon.